When you enter a relationship with a narcissist, one of the most unsettling realizations, usually discovered far too late, is that you were never truly noticed as a real person. You were not seen as a whole human being with your own inner world. You were judged, measured, and assigned a part to play. That part was not chosen based on your true personality or your real identity. It was chosen only by what you could offer to support the narcissist's fragile internal story about themselves. This is the painful truth. To a narcissist, you are not met as a full subject with your own mind. You are treated like an object, something to use. This is not a small thing. It shows a deep failure in the basic human ability to create a genuine connection, the kind that Martin Buber described as the I-thou relationship, where two people meet as equals. The narcissist cannot do this. Their entire psychological setup is built around defense rather than connection. They interact with others as tools for emotional survival. In their thinking, you are not a person with feelings and dreams. You are a mirror created to reflect back the image they need to believe about themselves. A mirror meant to reinforce their grand sense of importance or their belief that they are superior, or in some cases, their belief that they are constant victims. You exist to admire them, to take blame for them, to follow their demands, and most of all, to never threaten the picture they are desperately trying to keep alive. This picture is everything. A narcissist is not simply selfish in the normal way people sometimes are. They are constantly fighting off an inner collapse. Their sense of self is thin and unstable. It does not have the strong foundation that real confidence comes from. It is not supported by honesty, responsibility, or true self-awareness. So they depend on others to keep their self-esteem alive. And that is where you enter the story. You were given a role: the caregiver, the admirer, the one who absorbs blame, the one who carries emotions, the one who smooths things over, the one who forgives too much. These are roles, not relationships. And the moment you start stepping outside of that role, the moment you create boundaries, speak your needs, or grow in a direction they can know, control, the narcissist does not try to understand you. They do not adjust. They simply switch strategies. They may begin to devalue you. They may discard you. But it all comes from the same internal machinery. You no longer support the illusion they are trying to maintain. This is the core. Your worth to them depends on how well you fit their inner script. You see this pattern everywhere. In romantic relationships, where the moment you stop accepting unfair behavior, you suddenly become too much or too difficult. In families where a child who questions the narcissistic parent's version of events becomes the target of blame or is pushed away. In workplaces where a capable employee threatens a narcissistic boss and ends up being undermined, lied about, or pushed out. This is not normal conflict between two people. This is psychological objectification. You were not allowed to exist as yourself outside the narcissist's frame. Many people ask if narcissists know what they are doing. The answer is complicated. On a surface level, maybe they don't fully realize it. But deeper down, yes, they understand enough to know that they take more than they give. They know, even if they don't admit it, that they treat others as tools rather than equals. And this is where the coldness begins. You could give everything, your love, your time, your empathy, and they would still see you as replaceable, because what they connect to is not you. It is what you bring them: praise, approval, obedience, emotional support. If you stop giving those things, your humanity becomes inconvenient. And strangely enough, they will often accuse you of being selfish or distant. That is pure projection. What they really believe deep down is that they deserve your devotion no matter how they behave. That belief is built into the relationship from the start. And when you stop giving what they expect, when you finally see the manipulation and pull away, they feel betrayed. Not because they care about you, but because you stop supporting the story they created. You changed the script, and in their world, only they are allowed to do that. This is why people say a narcissist never truly loved you. It is not just a saying, it is a painful truth. They did not love you. They loved what you did for them. They were not connecting with your heart, your hopes, your inner life. They were connecting with their own need to be admired, obeyed, and kept in control. The saddest part is that you may have spent months or years believing that your worth depended on how well you played their assigned role. But that was not love. It was a one-sided exchange disguised as intimacy. What makes narcissistic relationships even more confusing is this. The very traits that attract the narcissist to you at the start are often the same traits they later punish you for. Your strength, your emotional awareness, your independence, your kindness, these qualities pull them in, but not because they want to honor them, they want to own them. You represent something they do not possess internally, and in their worldview, anything they lack must be controlled or destroyed. There is no middle ground. In the early stages, they idealize you. This is the classic beginning. You are seen as amazing, impressive, intuitive, admirable. You seem perfect to them. But this admiration does not come from understanding who you really are. It comes from projection. They see a fantasy version of you that fits their needs. As long as you don't disturb this fantasy, everything seems fine. But eventually something shifts. Maybe you speak up about something unfair. Maybe you succeed in an area where they feel insecure. Maybe you hold them accountable for their actions. Suddenly, your strength becomes a threat in their mind, not an asset. Now they are stuck. They want the benefits you bring, but they feel attacked by your independence. So they begin to slowly tear you down. At first, it is subtle. Sarcasm, little insults hidden inside jokes, hints of disapproval, coldness. Later it becomes sharper, gaslighting, manipulation, emotional punishment. They do this because deep inside they know they cannot match your level of emotional depth or resilience. Instead of being inspired to grow, they feel small next to you. And instead of admitting that, they blame you. They say you are too emotional, too demanding, too strong, too sensitive, too much. But in reality, your presence exposes the weakness they try to hide, and that is something they cannot tolerate. To understand this fully, we need to look deeper. Real strength is not control or dominance. Real strength is integrity. It is the ability to hold yourself steady without pretending. It is the capacity to face truth instead of hiding from it. When you bring this kind of strength into a relationship with a narcissist, you are not just threatening their pride, you are threatening the entire structure of their inner world. Their world is built on falsehood, self-deception, manipulation, image management. Your clarity disturbs that system. Your empathy makes it harder for them to hide. Your insight makes their behavior visible. Empathy is especially threatening to them. True empathy sees contradictions. True empathy asks honest questions. True empathy notices when something is off. This kind of awareness is unbearable for someone who survives by pretending. So instead of allowing themselves to be seen, they attack. They twist your words, they flip the story, they make you feel guilty for noticing the truth. It is not that they cannot see your strength. They absolutely can. They just cannot let you keep it unless they control it. And if they cannot control it, they would rather weaken it. This is why so many survivors of narcissistic relationships feel confused, drained, or broken. Their strength was not just ignored, it was used against them. They were made to feel wrong for being whole. This situation is deeply tragic because the narcissist ends up destroying the very thing that drew them in. They ruin the connection that might have helped them grow, not because they are monsters, but because they are emotionally unequipped. They do not know how to be close to someone who does not revolve around them. And so, your strength becomes the reason they justify their harmful behavior. They hate it because it reminds them of what they cannot face inside themselves: the emptiness, the insecurity, the fear of being ordinary. So, what does this mean for you, the one caught in the middle of this strange and painful cycle? It means you must learn the difference between being valued and being used. You must stop confusing admiration with love when the admiration is only there to control you. And most importantly, you must understand that your strength was never the problem. Your strength is simply the thing the narcissist could not bend to fit their fantasy. Your strength is the threat to their illusion, and it always will be. You can finally stop carrying the responsibility for their discomfort. You can finally stop bending yourself into smaller shapes to protect their fragile ego. You can stop apologizing for feelings that were real and reactions that were human. You can stop trying to be the shield for someone who never intended to protect you in return. This is the turning point that many people reach only after a long and painful struggle, the moment when you recognize that your suffering was never the problem. The problem was the environment that demanded you stay silent about it. Once you see this clearly, the entire dynamic begins to unravel. You start noticing how many times you held yourself back just to make them feel secure. You remember all the moments when you softened your truth, not because it was wrong, but because you feared the explosion that would come if you dared to speak honestly. You see how you twisted yourself into someone unrecognizable, not out of love, but out of survival. And as this understanding settles into your mind, something inside you starts to rise, slowly but steadily, like a truth you can no longer suppress. You begin reclaiming pieces of yourself that you didn't even realize you had given away. The sound of your own thoughts becomes clearer. The weight on your chest begins to lift. The confusion that once wrapped itself around your emotions starts to break apart. And in that clarity, you finally understand that the narcissist's reactions were never reflections of your worth. They were reflections of their fear, their hunger for control, their emptiness that always needed to consume something to feel full. This is the part that hurts the most at first because it forces you to confront the fact that no amount of love, patience, effort, sacrifice, or loyalty could have changed the outcome. Not because you were lacking, but because they were incapable. They were unable to meet you where you stood. They were unable to see you as an equal. They were unable to care about your feelings without interpreting them as threats. And they were unable to value your heart without wanting to own it. But this truth is also what sets you free. When you understand that the narcissist's envy, their cruelty, and their emotional games were rooted in their own emptiness, you stop trying to fix what was never yours to repair. You stop trying to prove your value to someone who was determined not to see it. You stop giving explanations to someone who only twisted them. You stop hoping for empathy from someone who only weaponized your openness. Slowly, your energy returns, your inner voice grows louder. The world around you starts to look a little brighter, not because everything magically becomes perfect, but because the fog created by their chaos begins to clear. You start remembering what peace feels like. You start remembering what joy feels like without the weight of someone else's judgment pressing down on it. You start feeling your own strength again, the strength that was always inside you but buried under their noise. And the more you step into this new space, the more you realize something important. Their envy was never about you being too much. It was about them being too little. It was about their inability to create the emotional depth you carry naturally. It was about their frustration with the fact that you could feel deeply, love honestly, and connect without pretending. These qualities confused them, threatened them, and angered them because they couldn't imitate them. And rather than learn from you, they chose to punish you for having what they lacked. This is why your healing is your liberation. Every step you take away from their influence weakens the hold they once had on your mind. Every moment of clarity breaks another thread of the old story they trapped you in. Every breath you take without fear restores a part of you that they tried to dim. And with time, you begin to see that your emotional depth was never a burden. It was never a flaw. It was never a sign of weakness. It was the very thing that made you powerful. Your ability to care, to feel, to reflect, to grow, to empathize, to rebuild yourself even after being shattered, these are strengths they could never possess. These are qualities they tried to tear down because they exposed their own hollowness. And the day you realize this fully is the day the grip they had on your life finally breaks. You begin to rise in ways you didn't expect. You begin to stand in your truth without shrinking. You begin to see relationships differently. You begin to choose yourself in moments where you once abandoned yourself. And you begin to understand that your value was never dependent on their ability to recognize it. When you reach this level of awareness, something remarkable happens. The narcissist loses the power they once held, not because they changed, but because you did. You stopped feeding the cycle. You stopped participating in their emotional games. You stopped allowing their projections to define you. And most importantly, you stopped believing the lies they built around you. From this point on, you walk differently. You speak differently. You carry yourself with a quiet strength that doesn't need validation. You move with an inner steadiness that comes from knowing who you are, not who they told you to be. And that inner freedom, the very thing they feared, envied, and tried to destroy, is what rebuilds your life. You become whole again, not because they finally gave you peace, but because you finally gave it to yourself. You reclaim your story, your voice, your heart, your future. And as you do, the truth becomes undeniable. You were never the weak one. You were the light they tried to dim. You were the strength they tried to undermine. You were the soul they could never become. And now that you see it clearly, nothing and no one can take that truth from you again.